Hello and welcome to Hello Governor, the podcast. As always, I am Abdullah, and my guest today is Shawn Gann. How you doing, Shawn?
Great, Abdullah. How you doing?
I'm surviving. I think that's the best any of us can do right now.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We all feel that.
God. But the first question is the obvious one, and I know that you probably get this a lot, but how did you get started, and what made you want to get into anime?
Well, I was fortunate to have gone to university in Arlington, University of Texas, and there I was in class. My class was Caitlin Glass, and Anthony Bowling was a couple years behind us. And through our connections, Funimation was right around the corner. They toured the facility. Caitlin started working there almost immediately. I was a theatrical performer in the area, and I ran a lot of similar circles with people like Joel McDonald and Ian Sinclair and all those guys that were already performing in the area. And around 2006, I was brought in to do episode 4 of One Piece and a little bit of Oron High School Host Club. And that's kind of where it began. I didn't really honestly take it seriously at the time. I was a very serious theatrical performer. I was an artiste. So I did not pursue it much further. I didn't really work those connections. And I ended up touring and nationally, internationally doing theater. And eventually I got married and realized I couldn't be on the road all the time. So I came back to voice acting. I came back to film performance and television and commercial and all that kind of stuff and kind of maintained my relationships. I didn't burn any bridges or anything like that. So usually uh, people get into this thing and, they push really hard to be a part of it. And I kind of stepped away for a very long time, came back around 2010, 2011, was more serious about my voiceover work and just being a more diversified creative, and it's all been history since. I ended up doing a lot of directing from 2016 on, and now my primary source of income and what I've been doing for the past 4-ish years is directing and mixing my voice acting with that as well.
And going from the mid 2000s and coming back to it in the early 2010s. How different was that? Was there a difficulty transitioning from the style because English dubs had changed a lot during those during the that time, and so was it difficult going back into it, or was it just, hey, I'm here now, gonna take this much more seriously than I did before, let's go.
A little bit of a mix of that stuff. I was already a pretty grounded performer. I had my training in classical Shakespeare. I'd come from a film background when I was younger. I, in fact, thought that I would go to school for film and for storyboarding, screenwriting, that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until I got to university I got kind of like pulled back into theater. I'd always kind of done both. But when I first started doing it, I guess the reason why I thought it was cute because I'm doing One Piece and Oron. It was kind of big, right? You have like kind of big, bold personalities, a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, and as anime started becoming more part of the cultural zeitgeist and more people started wanting to tell more intimate stories with it, that kind of went back into my wheelhouse. That kind of made me feel better about the character work I was doing. That's probably why I fell in love with it more, is that they got a little more kind of honed in on the performances and honed in on developing the character relationships. Yes, there's still really big, shonen comedy type stuff happening out there, and I can be a very big performer. But I think the flexibility and diversity of the anime field is what made me fall in love with it. And so I think I kind of eased back into it pretty well.
And what do you love and hate about what you do?
Like any artist, they start to loathe the thing, or at least the luster kind of comes off it when you realize, oh, now I have to do this for a living. It's not just this thing I'm pursuing, right? So there's already a little bit of the luster that falls off. What I hate about what I do, and that's kind of a strong word, is that I don't really have a choice in the shows I, direct. There's a pool of stuff that shows up there, and I do get to vie for the things that I want to do, but occasionally you have to do something that you didn't ask for. You do a ecchi type show, which I love certain ecchi shows, but sometimes they're not as well done as others. Or you do a silly isekai show that some studio's doing to kind of entertain kids with, or it doesn't really have much depth to it. So you don't have much choice in the matter sometimes as a director and a performer because you want the work. You want to work and you want to make connections with studios and connect with other artists. So sometimes you have to kind of swallow that pill and do work you don't find very fulfilling. What I love about it though is that there are moments that are super sublime within this show that really connect to the hearts and minds of what's going on in the world, connect deeply personally to me and are able to tell great stories and further kind of like some of my agenda of expanding the talent pool and expanding access to this field. And there have been several shows like that that I've run across as an actor and as a director that have really allowed me to kind of like hone in on this industry and give it work on the potential that it has.
And when you're working on a show that you're not like super like I don't want to say like dislike, but not it's I mean the quality isn't there. Let's be honest. Like a lot of these
Sure.
shows, like you look at that and it's like, yeah, the quality is just isn't there. As a director, how do you make sure that you go into that making sure that you make the best show that you can make?
I make sure that I remember when I'm in that studio working with my engineer, working with these fabulous performers, working with the writers and all the people that translate and put this stuff together, and that I look at my facility, especially my specific studio space that I get to work at, that is my space that I get to customize and kind of make my own and have my own personality, and I operate out of there 8 hours a day. I have to remember that it's a blessing to do what I do, right? For us to go in here and make silly voices and tell these stories and be able to chat with one another and have no real kind of like administrative deadline or thing that you're looking towards that you have to kind of be adherent to. You're in there to make the kind of art that you want to make, and you're in there to express yourself. And how I do that is I cast the best people that I can cast, even for the silliest of shows. And I try to look at it as I'm putting people who uplift the material that make it a little bit more than it is. And through our interaction and our collaboration, we have a really good time and we honor the story as close to the intent that we think we can make it. And we expand upon it as much as we can without, breaking that mold too. And I think that's the creative aspect of it. When you get something that you don't truly, truly love or that you truly wanted or was kind of foisted upon you and you go in it and you still want to tell the absolute best version of that story. And that's how I manage each of those sessions. And that's how I get through stories like that.
And out of all the shows you've worked on, which one would you say was the toughest to translate to English?
That's easy. I would say Requiem of the Rose King. I love that show. And the work on it was a lot. But I think it was given to me. It was my first show as a full-time director with Crunchyroll Funimation uh, when I was hired. It's a adaptation of Henry VI Part 3 into Richard III. And the lead character of Richard normally has a hunch on his back as his deformity. In this one, he was intersex. And so a very beautiful boy that people are very confused about whether they are male or female. Why do I like this person? It was hyper queer centric across the board. I cast it as such. But what didn't happen in the J, because the meter and the language doesn't really sit in it the same way, was putting a whole bunch of Shakespeare into it, right? And my goal was to honor the story that was coming across to us because it is an adaptation of a Shakespearean story with a lot of European kind of like influences in it. So we were able to work with our writer Jessica Slies and Tyler Walker. We were able to kind of bounce off each other and put in the meter and put in the rhyming couplets and really insert these really famous speeches in these really poignant moments and really have these actors attack it like it was a Shakespearean piece of text. And there's a lot of kind of watercolor work in it, a lot of still frame stuff in it. So it allowed a lot of times for these words to exist because the flaps weren't a problem, right? You could just act it. When they were on screen and when they were doing the regular, adaptation story and kind of conniving with one another and kind of pushing forth like the traditional anime set, that is what it is, and we still managed to fit Shakespeare into that as well. But definitely the most difficult, but like the most fulfilling as far as the fun and the kind of creative influence we were able to have on it.
And how do you, as a director, how do you get the best performance out of out of your actors?
I like to be engaging. I like to be empathetic. I provide as much context as possible to a scene. I tend to be more researched than anybody involved in the project, and that's saying a lot because I'm sure like writers and adapters and stuff put a lot of effort into that too. But I try to stay ahead of the game as much as possible. I try to be a fan of my own work, as far as like the source material and what I bring into it. And I try to be a safe space for any performer that comes into my room. I want them to be able to express themselves and to give the best performance that they are capable of giving and to understand that there's nothing that they need to do technique wise in a specific way to impress me. I've brought them on because I'm already impressed with them. I love their vocal print. I love what's unique about their sound, and there's nothing they have to affect to make me think, "Oh, now you're the villain. Oh, now you're the hero." Like these things can come naturally out of a performance, and I think that has to do with my kind of classical background of acting. I've been through several different schools of thought on how to get performance out of things. I've read a lot of things on how to understand stories in a more practical way. And I bring that all to the table whenever I have someone in my booth. And then on top of that, I just try to be a good person and a friend to them while we're working. And I think that eases them into their performance and allows them to express themselves in ways that sometimes they may not be allowed to.
And was there ever a point where, someone blew you away by by a read?
Oh, I'm always blown away. It goes without saying that Caitlin Glass is kind of a legend in this industry, right? She's Winry, she's done Oron, she's done solo leveling just recently, and that's won many accolades. And I just want to reference this one performance that she did in, since we're talking about it right now, Requiem of the Rose King. She played Queen Margaret for me. And at the first half of the story, which is the same in Shakespeare, Queen Margaret is seen as this, conniving, vicious, villainous type woman. She's going against, it's the White Rose versus the Red Rose, and she's killed Richard the Lionheart, and she's done all these terrible things, and she's had these really big villainous moments. But you realize she's doing it because of all the trauma and stuff that she's done. And at one point, her son, Edward, is killed historically too. And we have this moment where she kind of goes through this dialogue and these rhyming couplets, and she's lamenting her son and wishing that it was her. And we have it like run over the credits. Like it doesn't happen that way in the J. We have like her lamenting and crying run over the credits and stuff. And it was like a really, I'm like kind of, I'm a Pisces, so I'm a bit of a crybaby already. So I'm already kind of choked up thinking about it. So um, I think that like to have something like that happen and surprise me is like a thrill. And that was a great read, and that thrilled me a lot. And I'm also thrilled by new people that come into this, that bring new life and verve into the work that they do and surprise the heck out of me. Abi Kumar is somebody I just had in You Are Miss Servant. And I think he had done maybe a couple of things like Twilight Out of Focus, a couple of smaller roles and stuff, and I jumped him immediately into a lead role, and he was opposite Trina Nishimura, who is like another legend into this industry, and he held his own, and he had these really really new kind of fresh reads that were really kind of in sync with his particular personality, and I was stunned. I mean, I loved the quality of his voice already to begin with, but he provided something that really kind of blew me away.
I was about to ask, like, when you're working with someone who's new to the business, how do you make sure that they understand that they understand the material, and B, they give a good performance?
They're professionals, even if they're new for the most part. Yeah, there are some people who have very little experience, and when you get into the 18, 19-year-old range, sometimes that's going to be their only experience. I make sure that they are welcome to fail, whether it's they think they've failed me or they feel failed themselves. but to just look at that as a next step to getting the performance that they're looking for. I can coach them and train them through the technique of working in an ADR setting and working in anime and understanding how flap work works and how the rhythm works. All those things are all learned techniques that you can apply. And I can coach anybody through that and kind of ease people into that. And if I know that they have a little, that maybe it's their first time or there's little experience, I can book more time in a session to kind of like make that part of the session. And as we work through it and get them more comfortable with that, the part that I really encourage them to be more comfortable about is that their personality and their acting choices shine through and that they don't doubt themselves and don't feel like there's any fear of doing something that may not be what I expect. Because my hope is to get something that I don't expect every time. I want them to beat my subconscious bias on what I think a character should sound like or behave like. You know, I want them to surprise me with their storytelling and give me another angle on it, so then I can explore that area with them.
And speaking of like breaking down characters, how do you go about that? Because when you like you said, when you have a specific actor in a role and you know what they can do you try to what do you call it? Like go in one direction or try to do something different with them? See how it
It
goes.
really just depends on how well I know them. You know, I if I'm getting somebody new and they have a certain vocal quality I'm looking for, and I've heard, their auditions or their sides or anything like that, that made me go, I ought to try them out on this. At that point, I'm not trying to subvert anything. I'm not trying to make them do anything against the grain of what they think they might be doing. You know, part of being comfortable is for them to express their best self to begin with. But if I do get somebody in a situation, I like using The Legendary Hero is Dead as a good example. I had Rico Fajardo and Alexis Tipton playing the leads in that show for me. And that show has a lot to do with body swaps and personality swaps and mind swaps and stuff. And that was a fun minefield for them to play in because Rico would end up in her body. And pardon me for just one second. I need my caffeine. Rico would end up in her body acting as her, and Alexis would end up in Rico's body acting as him. And these personalities would have to like fly, and it was a good chance for them to really play against each other because Rico's kind of a wild performer. And if you ask anybody about Alexis, Alexis is super sharp, super keen, like can really dissect things really well, like great control, great resonance, and musicality to her voice. And Rico has a lot of those elements too, but he is very much more chaos, and a lot of people are fans of him for that very, very reason. And to have those two, who are very good friends, play off each other and kind of give their best impersonation of each other was kind of a trip.
Now, I remember that show, and I think that again, I don't think the show is. I don't want to say it's like. I don't want to say trashy, but it kind of is trashy. I mean, let's be honest. But
It knows what it is.
yeah,
We knew what it was. And I'll let you keep on right there. But I would say on the J side, people disliked it because it was traditional, like Master Roshi, dirty old man type humor and stuff like that. And I think that freed us on the dub side to kind of like take ownership and make it more about, don't shame a person for their kinks. They're earnest people. They're this, they're that, and allowed us to ad lib and have a lot more fun with it. And I think the people that discovered it via the dub really enjoyed themselves.
no, but I was just about to say like I think what I loved about the dub was when they do eventually switch bodies, I do love Alexis's take on the character because Ricard, the main character is a pervert, and when they
Right.
switch bodies, like they switch bodies. They don't do the thing where they switch voices. It's like the female is the voiced by the female actress, and the male actor is voiced by the male. So when they switch bodies, like it's like female actress. So hearing Alexis like do like a perverted character was a lot of fun.
Oh man, she was great. It was so much fun.
So yeah, and again, like it's not. I wouldn't say it's like the best show to watch, but I mean it was. But I can tell like you guys had fun with the dub, and I do love. I mean, personal preference for me is like I do love it when dubs take a little bit more like freedom with the material to like just have just let actors play because I miss that.
Yeah.
We used to do that. I mean, they used to do that a lot in the early 2000s and 2010s, but we just don't do that anymore because we want to stay true to the text, which is fine. I get it, but I feel like you kind of lose a lot of identity. Like a lot of these shows start to sound the same because a lot of the actors are just trying to stay true to the J when it's like just. And sometimes I'm watching these shows and I'm
Yeah.
like, just like, do your own thing. Please do your own thing. It's fine.
Yeah, and we say that, and I tend to agree with that, and I think like especially with Legendary Hero, that's about as close to like a Ghost Stories like out of control kind of adaptation as we've done in a long time, right? But it's a fine line. You can't make everybody happy, right? You can make choices where somebody like to me, I'm not so hung up on Seiyu sounds and tones and stuff like that. So long as they exist in the same character space and can tell the same story, I'm fine with using almost anybody for a role. And sometimes that backfires on you with certain fandoms. You know, somebody might seem a little too high or a little too low, comparatively speaking. You know, sometimes they prefer, their female, their femme characters to have the higher voices and don't like the kind of Western sensibility of like mid low tones. They don't want their, tough guys to have, you know, baritone. They want them to all be baritones and basses. And, you start playing a fine line when you start caring about what too many people think about the adaptation. I try to be as free as I can on how I put things together and how I cast and how I direct and what stories we tell and the words that we utilize. Some places, some studios get really hung up and treat the source material as, you know, it's written in stone or something like that. When in fact, it's an adaptation, usually. I mean, sometimes there's original, but it's an adaptation of another piece of source material, a manhwa, donghua, a manga, anything, manhwa, anything. Anyway, it's an adaptation of something like that put into a different medium. That medium is then acted and ad-libbed and done in a certain performative style by the Japanese studios, and then when it's ready to become over here for a dub, it goes through a translation process. And then that translation goes through another translation process to make it more readable to what's going, a sensibility of how we read things over here. And then that translation is adapted and time coded into another thing. And that is done without knowing who's going to act the thing or who even's going to direct the thing. And once that's fully adapted, it ends up in my booth with me and this actor that they've never considered, and we have to work off these lines. And at that point, if the lines don't work, if the lines don't fit, I adapt it even further from there. I chop the script, I add to the script. I look at context in the translation. I look in context versus the original source material. And if those things, for some reason, aren't lining up, or it makes more sense to make it back in the original sense of the story, without destroying what's been delivered to us story wise and tension wise, then I'll make those changes. I make those changes all the time, and I make them on the fly very quickly. Some people are not prepared to do that sort of thing, and that's fine. And some studios certainly don't want you to touch the text at all. They'll be like, "That's what came from Japan. Gosh, we can't change that." I go, "Why not?" It's not Tennessee Williams. It's not like, this piece of like novel or literature that's been worked on for 20 years, that's been, somebody's life, sweat, and work. The speed and transition and like adaptation process is so fast that it has to be a collaboration. If you're not collaborating with everyone downstream, all the way across, right to the actor and right to the director before you hit it out the door, then you're doing a disservice to the story and, not telling the best possible thing that you can.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that's kind of like what people, that I mean, I think that's the reason why it annoys me whenever I see people complain about English dubs online. I'm like, well, why is this still a thing? But I mean, it's just it annoys me because I just want to say, like, look, man, a lot of these shows are working on tight schedules, and sometimes they're just doing it on the fly. So, you know, like, and they, I mean, and nowadays, like, simuldubs are a thing, and you guys got to get that out faster. So
Yeah.
that's extra pressure. And
I work on
sometimes,
shows that are day and date. Kaiju #8 was same day, same release as the Japanese. So we had to be ready to go exactly the same time. And it's not the first time I've done that. And that's not the first time a lot of directors have done that in my studio. There's going to be so many more of those. That's going to, a lot of fans hope that's the norm. You want to have the option to have your choices at the exact same time. If you let the Japanese, production get 2 weeks ahead of you, even in simuldub, of course, more people are going to watch it in the Japanese because it's there. You want to be gratified in the storytelling, right? And you get used to those voices. And so a lot of those people end up trying to come back to the dub and they're like, oh, this just sounds wrong because, well, they've gotten really used to what they've watched ahead on. And I don't blame them. I'm not upset with that. The only thing that bothers me is when people weigh it against one another for value's sake. And I'm just like, just enjoy what you're going to enjoy. Don't fetishize a language you don't even speak, and act like that's the best thing that's ever happened. If you go to Japan and ask fans there, they're like, yeah, they can tell when somebody's overacting. They can tell when somebody's, sloughing off on the text and stuff like that, like we can in our own language. Be like, no, that was a bad actor doing that thing. But since you don't speak the language, you don't know it. You don't understand the context. You don't understand, what it takes to emote those certain things. So I take it with a grain of salt. I don't engage in that sort of thing. I enjoy what I enjoy, and what I enjoy is listening it to in all languages. In fact, if I can get my hands on certain languages for certain dubs that aren't Japanese or English, I sometimes watch those too because I find it fascinating to see kind of like the performative styles of other countries, right? Mexico is a great example. Like they hold like Dragon Ball Z, like is like that scripture, right? They'll stand in the plaza and they'll watch it and cheer it on and like watch in big groups, but they also adore their own language. They adore their own performers and hoist them up high and kind of like revel in them. Whereas, for some reason within the English community, there's just this battle between like, whoa, whether or not, dub performers are worth their salt and versus the Japanese performers. I go, most other countries don't have that problem. Most other countries adore their own language and think their language is, in fact, far superior to any other language. You think the French care, what the Japanese sound like? French love their language. Italians love their language. Russians love their language. And if you try to speak it, and you speak it and you're not like a native Russian, they catch you immediately. Let people enjoy the language in whatever language they want.
Yeah, no, man, as someone who's been to Europe, I can attest that it's tough going to Europe because they don't speak English. Like a lot of times you go there and you go to Italy, you go to Germany, they don't speak English. They don't, they just
Yeah.
speak German and Italian. So if you don't speak the language, it's gonna be it's gonna be a difficult curve. So, they don't care, like it's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like it's weird to me seeing English speakers get hung up on English dubs when in reality, like they're just an option. They're not like the be all
Literally,
end
it's
all.
just an option. Yeah. You don't have to watch the thing. If that's not your thing, don't watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, there are a lot of dubs I've watched recently that I thought were terrible. I'm like, this is terrible. I'm just gonna watch it subbed, and that's fine. I'm not gonna send the people who worked on the dub hate. I'm just like, well, this is awful, but I'm not gonna waste time obsessing over it. I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is terrible, and this is why, blah blah blah. It's like, no one cares. No one cares.
Yeah, why be perpetually online venting your frustration over that sort of thing when you could go and enjoy the next thing that you enjoy? Find enjoyment, go touch grass, go out there and find something you can love. Hating is such a, some people are like, oh, being a hater is easy, but like really hating is such negative energy. You don't want to do that. That's not, you won't have a long life that way. Stress is not worth it.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes, like, I mean, as someone who does watch both sub and dub, there are like some subs that I just thought were mediocre as well. I'm like, this is not, not great, but sometimes it's the only option you have because the show was never dubbed, and it's like, well, I gotta deal with
Right.
this now. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like you just a lot of times, I think with anime, it's just like you just gotta make the best out of it. Sometimes a sub is mediocre and sometimes the dub is terrible, but at the end of the day, as long as with me, it's like as long as I have the choice to pick between the two, it's all good. But if I don't have the choice and I have
Yeah.
to make the most of it out of it, I'm just gonna be like, eh.
It's all gravy, and I'm happy for that. And in fact, I'll put it this way, like I think the Jays are superior because they're the ones that orchestrate the whole thing. They brought it from the ground up. When you see those credits and you see like the composers and the musicians and the animators and, the art designers and the still, there's so much more that happens on that end. I appreciate everything that they do, right? All the dub at that point on, when it transitions to us, is us trying to further tell that story that they created, and to be a part of that story and to create another avenue to access that story. It's not that we're trying to take ownership of that story. We're not trying to make it our own piece of art or literature. The performers are the performers, and they give their hearts to it, and they do the work that they do, and I give everything I can to the stuff that's in front of me. But there in no way am I saying that like we're superior and that like it's ours now. It just is. It just is another option to watch the thing. So I don't give into all that hate, but I respect so much all the stuff that they do. So much so that I wish that on our end we would develop more original work and build it from the ground up, and make that a part of what we do, right? And that is, I feel like that's a goal, for many studios. I feel like that's going to happen on a higher level eventually, where we have that stylization of storytelling and connectivity to you know, the manga style of like art being brought into that medium, and because it such becomes a global phenomenon, you can't hold on to it now, right? It's already happened. Tony Valen, in a production that I was in, he is a Portuguese French mangaka artist, which would make it a manfra because he's really based out of France. He's the first European to be adopted by a studio in Japan. Lurch and Viz Media took him on, and they made Radiant. And Radiant, I thought, was excellent. I think Radiant's a great anime. In fact, I hope, I pray, I beg one day that a season three comes because we've done like 50 episodes of that. And I thought it was a beautiful storytelling story with the Japanese art style influences, with a lot of Eurocentric style influences, a lot of European folklore that was put into it, like old Grendel style storytelling in there. And like you got this interesting perspective on the medium from a person on the other side of the world. I think that's wonderful, and I think there needs to be more stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is like, when it comes to anime, like, you're just stuck with Japan, and with Japan, I think the problem right now is like it's getting oversaturated with isekai shows and all these other things, and occasionally you'll get a popular manga adaptation, but those are few and far between. But there's just not enough options. Is basically what I'm trying to say. You know.
Yeah, and of course they don't. There's the rivalry between countries, obviously the history, and China's coming out with a lot more of their donghwas being adapted into anime style, right? Their version of it, and the Koreans are starting to do it too. And there's just always going to be tension amongst those three countries on how that art style is done and what they do, and who takes ownership and who's better, and like what the performative style should be. And I get that. I get it. I understand it. But as the rest of the world adopts it and takes ownership of it, and kids grow up and want to do that art style, and are inspired by it, it's like people in sports inspiring people to, go to a field. Ronaldo and Messi has inspired many football players. Michael Jordan, LeBron James inspired many basketball players. It's gonna be you're going to see these heroes, you're going to see these artists, people who love these seiyus, and they're going to want to be voice actors because of them. And people are going to see, stuff like Spielberg, and they want to be directors because it's just going to keep happening. And as that medium becomes more and more popular and more globalized, and the desire for it becomes higher and higher, the art's going to come from corners you never expected. And somebody's going to invest in that sort of thing, and they're going to be the next hero of the industry, or they're going to create an entirely new facet of it. Art is one of those things that goes up and down as far as the trends are concerned. Right now, anime is in a kind of like a peak moment, but it can't last forever. We're all aware that like interests change, styles change, and who knows what the next big thing to come around the corner will be.
Yeah, I mean, while anime is popular now, who knows how long that's going to be the case, like you said, because again, sure, it's great to have all these shows come out every, each season, every year, but at the same time, it's like, how long is this gonna last? Like, how long before we move on to the next thing, and then anime goes back to being a niche thing like it was in the in the 90s and 2000s, you know? Because
I
people are
don't think anybody will
fickle.
have to hide. Yeah.
Because people are fickle. At the end of the day, people are fickle, and people have short attention spans. Like they just want to like, but I think that comparing like anime now compared to back then, I think because it's cool. It's quote unquote cool to be a geek now. That it's not that it'll always have an audience, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. I mean I would like more variety between shows. Like I would like to see like more Western, shows, more serious Western shows alongside anime. I don't want it to just be like, oh, we're gonna do a show for adults, but it's a comedy. It's always a comedy. But I'm like, I don't want to watch comedies. Oh, you don't want to watch comedies? Go watch anime if you want to watch like action shows. I'm like, but I don't know, man. Like it's frustrating me. I hate this notion in the West that animation is just like for children, because a lot of times you have, I've seen teenagers say like, I wish we had like our shows that are aimed for us. Like I wish we had like animated shows that are aimed for teenagers because, to speak to our sensibilities to entertain us because we just don't have that. Because all we
Yeah.
have is like kids shows and anime. And it's like that's it. And it's like kids shows are too childish, and anime is like very, anime is
Yeah.
anime.
Specific.
So
Yeah, we were really bad about that here. I think where it came to a head for us, and it was a very sad moment because now it has its own category at the Oscars, right? Best animated feature. That came when stuff like Beauty and the Beast back in the second golden age of Disney, Beauty and the Beast and Lion King were like getting nominations for Best Picture, right? And all these people like, oh no, we can't have a cartoon win Best Picture. We can't have a cartoon in place, and so we kind of took a step backward in that by making categorically putting it in a different space and not treating it as a film or treating it as this high piece of media that deserves to stand amongst the best picture winners that we've had these years, and that's sad. And now anime is infiltrating a lot more like the award shows here as well, uh, and you're starting to see them be a part of the animation categories, and we're doing the same thing where like we split it off. It's like, oh, now we have to do not just animation, we have the best anime category and stuff like that. I'm like, well, we can all just make it together. We can all just give the best piece of art, the respect and accolades and time that it deserves. Yeah, man. Anime, I don't think is ever going to go back into the sector of people having to hide their liking of it, but it will chill out and it'll be like any medium where there will be sublime pieces of work that come out that bring back attention to it and quality. There'll be quality works because people have more time. Studios will have more time. Animators will have more time to make the work. It won't be like what was going down with, JJK season two, where the MAPPA artists are like working round the clock to get something that's incomplete out, for streaming, and then have to like remake it and like, give you that full quality when it's on Blu-ray. That kind of speed is not sustainable. And eventually, I think that studios will either fall off or they'll just have to slow down and focus on quality and focus on better working environments. And that's not the attitude of, I know that's not really the attitude of Japan a lot of the times. But that's what's going to have to happen. Otherwise, you're going to have the whole industry kind of collapse on itself, I think.
I mean that's kind of my biggest issue with MAPPA is like they just work on too many projects. That's their biggest problem is like they just end up working on these projects when they have no business working on these projects. I mean, I remember like an interview. I remember an interview they mentioned like Hell's Paradise. They weren't even supposed to work on that show. It's just like, but it was just something to do. It's like work is work, and I'm like, but what? Stop taking, stop agreeing to do these shows.
And it's stylistically, Hell's Paradise is a great show for them, but they had so many other things going on at the same time. And I think it kind of got overshadowed in its first season. And it's been a little bit longer for the second season, which I think is actually good. I think it's good for that. So, because I think the second season will probably provide a lot more fullness and continuity, context to the first season, maybe even be of a better quality. I thought the quality was great already, but I know the kind of pressure that was under them to like make it. But taking their time with it now, it might be something entirely better. A sophomore season that ends up being better than the first.
I'm just really worried about the Ray's arc for Chainsaw Man because I'm just like I don't know how I feel about taking that and making it into a movie. I'm just like I don't know how I feel about that, honestly.
I'm
Like I'm
excited.
sure
I'm excited.
I mean I'm sure it's gonna be great, but like they're just gonna have to cut out so much stuff to make it like a feature film, and I'm just like as a manga reader, as a fan of the manga, it's gonna bother me. But you know,
Just depends on how far they take it, right? Because
I'm
the Reze arc kind of overlaps some of the upcoming arcs leading into, what happens at the end of that first major arc with Makima and stuff like that. So, um, I think when I first heard it, everyone had a knee jerk and was like, "Oh, that's crazy. Why would they do that?" And then I kind of revisited the manga and kind of looked at that arc and looked at like what happens in that time period with Reze and like those interactions and those relationships. I think it's going to work. I feel really good about it. Like 2 hour anime movie. I mean, it's probably going to be longer. Feels like a lot of material in one go for just what essentially, if you were to put it out on for a season, it'd probably only take half a season or so, maybe a little more to complete it, and then you'd move on to the next bit, right? I don't know. We'll see. It looks pretty already.
Yeah, and you know, props to Denji Seiyu for just going completely nuts as as
Yeah.
uh as Chainsaw Man. I had the pleasure of meeting him at a con, and he's just like just a sweet guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the first time I saw him in company because Mappa was presenting was at the San Jose Crunchyroll Expo. I was there in that audience when all the reveals were done, and they had all the seiyus remote in via satellite to say howdy, and all the director, lead animator, the mangaka, they were all there presenting it, and Sim was there too to play. Not that they got to be on there, but they representing, like everyone thought for a while Sim was going to be maybe an artist on there because they had their little chainsaw song and they of course had just done Attack on Titan and stuff. But it was a really fun expo. I really liked that one.
Plus, I mean, not to brag, but I think that but you know, it's pretty cool that I can say that I've met Denji's English and Japanese Seiyu at a con.
Oh,
You know,
Ryan's a
man,
sweetheart. I love
yeah,
Ryan.
yeah, Ryan's just a sweetheart, and I've had him. I remember having him on the show, and I remember him before he blew up, and so, but I'm happy to see that he's like become like one of the big go-to anime guys. Much,
He's a
much,
hard worker and
yeah.
he grinds and he understands the business really, really well and he loves the stuff that he does. And I think that helps a lot for him. He's a wonderful person to work with and you can just feel his energy and his positivity in everything that he works on, which is great.
And let's talk about the show that you're mostly known for, Kaiju #8. Like you said, it was a same day release. What was that process like? Because I'm curious, like, how did you guys do that?
So how those work and how I can just kind of start at the beginning. When the studios brought it to us to begin with, this is why we wanted to do it this way. They are like, we want this to be like a Western Marvel type experience. We want the Marvel experience. We want people to come into it with this big action, these big, overpowered things, and kind of like connect to these characters in that way, and kind of feel like you're on this adventure with them. And it has a lot of Western action sensibilities as far as the audio is concerned, and the flash, and all that other stuff. And we're like, that's awesome. Then they're like, also, we want to partner with X, we want to partner with Twitter, and we want to stream it worldwide. When it premieres, like 9 at night in Japan or whatever, it premieres at whatever time zone you're in the world on X, exactly the same time. And we're like, that's amazing. And 30 minutes after that, it appears on Crunchyroll's streaming platform, and we even had like a countdown with custom animation. And it was always this great feel, like, oh yeah, here comes the next one. You had kaiju warnings and all this other stuff. And how you do that is the studio has to have the material, the animation, and the translation available to us weeks in advance. Sometimes our preference, of course, would be to have it a month, or the more time, the better, right? So a lot of that stuff on their end is already recorded like it would be normally. It's just they're holding on to it and they're working on it at the same time as they're providing it to us. So when they provide that stuff to us, we've had, when you get to see episode one or episode two of something like that, we've already recorded 4 or 5 episodes in advance. And that's how we kind of keep up with it. Now, in the situation where, animation and production time gets delayed in any form or fashion, there's that cushion of 4 or 5 episodes to kind of give us a break and, kind of like breathing room in case that happens. And it had gotten to the point last season at episode 11 and 12 where production got backed up so much that we had to stall for a week. We had to stall for a week and get behind what the Japanese was doing, and that was unfortunate. But it still was a huge success. It's a big experiment as far as how we did the whole umbrella of it, and I'm excited to get back to work on it. We all know it's coming back in July, so you know, take from that what you will.
Yeah, because I remember when I had Ezra on and I asked her about, how you guys did that. She said like, "Oh, we recorded like a lot of episodes in advance, and it was like crazy because it's like, she had to sit on that, sit on the fact that she had already booked the part and she had already recorded her lines
Right? Yep.
months in advance because like, before the show was even announced. So it's like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's not something you get to experience in anime that much as an actor. Usually you record something and it's airing essentially the same week you recorded it, right? Maybe the week after, right? It's usually pretty quick. So you don't have to sit on anything. And it's not quite as bad as a video game. Like you can record a video game and it'll be months, sometimes years before you get to say anything about it, right? So it's interesting for an anime person to experience that kind of like, by the way, you don't get instant gratification. You can't announce it and you can't just use this to book things right away. You have to wait till this thing, like our marketing team says something about it, or you have to wait until it's actually aired. And like it is fun to watch. I love all those actors. I love all those artists. It's fun to watch them squirm sometimes.
Yeah, because I remember when the show was announced, everyone was kind of like, "Oh, who's gonna do the English dub? Who's gonna be doing who?" And it's like, and we were just waiting on that and those announcements. And when the announcements came out, it's like, "Oh, that's cool. Oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person." Then it's like, "Who?"
There was a couple new people in there. There was a couple new people in there. There was a couple of mainstays in there, and there's a couple of surprises for sure. I got the cast that I wanted, and I think they delivered very well for me.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like it's interesting that you also mentioned that the clients wanted it to feel like a Marvel thing because, watching the English dub, it kind of feels like a very Marvel-esque type project. Almost feels like a Western show as opposed to
Yeah, and that's
as
kind of
opposed
the
to an
goal. That
anime.
was kind of the feel, right? Yeah.
So, a- and
Uh,
and out of all the people you worked on that show, which session was the most fun?
uh, the funnest. I think Kaiju number 9, Alejandro Saab. Uh, there was a middle of the season fight that he was having against Iharu and Reno, where he's blocked them off from everybody. You have Adam MacArthur and Ben Stegmar's character fighting against him, and then Nazi Tasha Kafka shows up as Kaiju number 8, and it's that huge fight. The first time that Kaiju number 9 and Kaiju number 8 fight each other, and Kaiju number 9's really overwhelmed in the fight. And I had a lot of fun recording all of that, but especially Alejandro's stuff because we were taking it from this very experimental, like he's weird, he's a little quirky, and like he's bad, but yet he's not doing anything because he's like super malicious. He's almost like a scientist experimenting on things. And even when he's getting beat up, and even when things are going awful for him, he's kind of like reflecting on it in a very pragmatic sort of way. Like he's just being like, "Oh, I'm getting beat up. Oh no, my head's been knocked off." Like it's like nothing's been like the reactions and stuff are very kind of like even keel. But I really had fun on doing that because it's a great balance to get a good performance, to make it kind of quirky, make it kind of fun. And it ended up having one of the most memeable moments in it where he's like about to lose and he's like, oh no, I'm in danger. And it ended up being like a Ralph from The Simpsons feel. Like everyone kept putting Kaiju number 9 on that bus, putting his head on top of Ralph's body, and like it was just a lot of fun to see, to do that session, and then to watch kind of people react to it. That was a lot of fun. Um, as far as like intense stuff, uh, I don't think people knew who Abigail Blythe was as Kikoru, really. I mean, she had had a couple of roles prior to that, but I don't think anyone was really hyper aware of her. She was kind of like newish to the scene. When she first encounters Kaiju #9 and starts taking shots and screaming in pain and screaming for her fights and stuff, I think that really caught a lot of people by surprise because she is a great screamer, super intense, high power to tsundere. She's got all the makings for it, and she really like crushed it, I think, in that sequence too.
It must be amazing like having to work with so many talented actors and being like and having to get asked like which one was your favorite because you're like I like all of them. Can't I just say all of them?
They're all my babies, but sometimes baby number five does something remarkable, because they're given the opportunity to do so, because the story leads them to that. Every single one of them is going to do something amazing, and or for the most part already have. But yeah, there's certain moments that stand out like that, just like they tickled me, or I was moved considerably by them. I think that another surprise in the whole thing was having Christopher Waycamp come in as Esau, the general, and kind of, everyone's like, yeah, he's gruff, he's big, he's deep. Like, who could it possibly be? And then it's Waycamp. Waycamp's not known for being like necessarily a deep, gruff kind of guy. He does kind of stoic characters, but everyone was like, whoa, I didn't know he could get that deep. I didn't know he could be that like intense and big and all this other stuff. And like, uh, insider knowledge on that. That's the only part he auditioned for. Like when I sent out the auditions, that's all he sent in because I think he felt like he knew he could do it. And I was like, because I kind of got on him about that too. He's like, you didn't want to audition for Kafka and anything? It's like, you just sent this one part in? He goes like, felt right. And I was like, oh man, yeah, it was right. You kicked ass. It was great.
I love that mentality of like, whenever an actor's like, I don't want to audition for like any of the main stuff because I know there's going to be a lot of pressure on that, but I feel like I want to audition for like the ensemble character that's going to like be real popular because those are
Yeah.
the ones you want. And I'm like, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. J. Michael Tatum was a fun guy to work with too, because he says that all the time. Oh, I love playing these characters that come in, and then they make a huge impact, and then they get killed, or like they don't ever come back, or something like that. But everyone remembers who they are. That way, I still get like the love and like the accolades from it, but I don't have to like wake up at 8 in the morning to go to work and deal with it, or stress my voice out the entire time. He's like, I just like to ruin things and then be on my merry way.
And was there ever a point where someone ad-libbed something and you kept it in?
Well, I think that "Oh, I'm in Danger" was pretty much an ad lib in Kaiju, but across the board, anything I've worked in, I'm always open to ad libs. There are things that actors bring to the table, and I think that working with me allows them to feel free to do so. I think one that stands out for me right off the bat, and it's not even a word or anything like that. Both Emmy Lowe and both Keiji Tang in the Apothecary Diaries, they want the goal for us, especially for my casting and storytelling, is to make it as Chinese centric as possible. I mean, it's being told in a fictional Dynasty era of China, but not being exclusionary, but I at like kind of pillar points having like a lot of great Chinese representation within the show, and they wanted to bring a lot of that attitude and like a lot of that feel of being, Asian, being Chinese, and like the familial stuff like that. And there's this thing that they do. They do it occasionally. They don't do it all the time, where something goes wrong in the show, and they'll go, "Ayah, ayah," and it's a very Asian way of reacting to things. Like all our fathers do that. They walk with their hands behind their backs, strolling around all the time. They'll see something that throws them off a little bit, and they'll just be like, yeah. And both of them have managed to slip that into the show. And I cackle every time they do it.
It's that's funny because like every time I see people discuss that show, it's always like talking about the serious scenes, but because I've never watched it because it's like 2 seasons long, and I'm just like I don't have the time to invest in
It's
something like this.
Do yourself a favor. Each episode feels episodic, but they eventually coalesce and merge. So the brilliance of that show is you can watch a couple episodes and feel like, oh yeah, that's cool, right? There's some mystery to the things that you watch, but you can watch it and feel like, oh, I watched a whole story in one episode. Plus, it's just really good. It's pretty. Toho's animation works amazing. The music is incredible. And the actors are incredible too. I mean, even on the Seiyu side, you got, like Aoyuki playing Mao Mao, you got Asami Seto playing Shisui, and just they've got the best of the best working it on their side, and I feel like we have the best of the best working it on our side as well. So, uh, I know everyone's always like, you got to watch this show. I'm not like doing that to you, but I think you would enjoy it. It's a really cool show.
Like, man, if you're gonna tell me, hey, you should watch this, I just want to let you know that it's gonna be added to the backlog, and the backlog is already like monstrous enough as is.
Oh,
So,
that's fine.
you know,
You find yourself in a situation where you're like, you know what? You know what sounds good? Somebody that really likes poisons and somebody that really likes, a Sherlock Holmes kind of moment, because sometimes you have to watch something based on how you feel, right? Uh, so, if it makes your backlog and you decide you want to watch a Sherlock Holmesian sort of like, you know, strong female lead show, that's your jam, go for it. If you're interested in learning about Chinese history, go for it.
again, like it's just I just look at that backlog and I'm just like, oh man, because that's with me. Because I mean, I joke like a lot of times. It's like sometimes I watch something 2 years after it's finished, and I'm just like, this show is pretty great. Why is no one talking about it? Oh yeah, because it's been 2 years and everybody's already watched it. But I'm just like, I want to talk about it now because I just watched it.
Hey, believe me, I'm in my deep dive to One Piece right now, so I I won't get to a point where I can talk to anybody of significantly about it until I get to the end, which will be a while.
Oh, One Piece I'm just never touching because I just like I've told this story before. I tried watching like one arc. I'm like, "Oh, this arc seems interesting." And then I realized, "Oh, it's 50 episodes long." No.
And that's a
God, no.
small arc. That's a
Yeah.
small arc.
Yeah.
But Wit Studios is doing a remake of One Piece, I know. So I think like it's like the television show, I think has attracted a new audience to it. And now Wit is doing another version of it. So people who want to jump on board with episode one in a new format and a new storytelling and adaptation, they can start with that and feel like they're a part of something rather than like having to catch up to something. It's not out yet, obviously, but I know we've seen it in the news.
No, I just think that, and this is like one of my criticisms of One Piece is like it doesn't do the typical manga adaptation where it cuts out stuff to fit into a season. It's like they have to adapt everything, and I'm just like, why? God, why?
It's not even the longest one. Detective Conan's been going on for thousands of episodes. It's like there's we all think about how One Piece is just this incredibly long series, and I looked at like the top 20, and like One Piece falls at like number 8 or 9 on like the length. I'm like, why are you kidding me? There are shows like this still going on, and Detective Conan's one of them. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because Case Closed, I think the thing with Case Closed is like people remember it, but very few people actually like watch it religiously and just like feel obsessed with it and want to talk about it because it's just like, hey,
Yeah.
it's there, but it's like, and then like you said, when you look at it, it's like, oh, that's still going. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Guess he never found those people that did him dirty all
Yeah,
those
right.
years ago. Years ago.
So you never find the people who did this, and you never find the One Piece.
Yeah. But anyway, like I also wanted to ask, like, are there any shows that you're currently keeping up with?
Vigilantes, I'm watching right now. I'd finished up all through Solo Leveling season 2 not too long ago. I'm doing a rewatch of Frieren at the moment. I'm watching To Be Hero X. Uh, I want to start watching Mono because I directed Laid Back Camp, and there's been crossover with those characters in that show. And in fact, I know some people have already recorded and like have been in the broadcast. I think like Nadeshiko Morgan Le Ray's character has shown up, and Clark's character has shown up in that show. And I'm just like, wow, that is so funny that they keep it in, like not necessarily like not only the same universe, the same school. It's just a different club within the school. It's the photography club, and it's just a bunch of young kids that like photography versus the kids that like to go camping. And what else? What else have I been watching? Don to Don I just finished not too long ago. I'm excited to see the movie come out for the kind of like precursor to the second season. Um, yeah, man, I watch a lot of stuff. I keep up with as much as I can. I'll even, step into things that uh, I normally wouldn't watch just because I want to see what a director is up to or and doing. Um, uh, like an isekai, like Teogonia has come up, and I've kind of checked out a couple of those. And um, oh, Daima, I'm watching through Daima right now because Daima's all the dubs finally out for that one. Um, yeah, I think that's enough anime for the moment.
It's crazy to hear that you have no problem working watching anime because every time I talk to someone who works in anime, they're like, I can't like go home and watch anime. I'm just like I'm burnt out. I don't want to watch anime anymore.
I am an obsessive consumer of media. I think for me to be better is to read a lot, to consume a lot, to watch a lot, to listen to a lot, and to participate a lot. I still do a lot of theater in the area. I work for several Shakespeare companies. I work for several of the prominent theater companies within my area. I watch movies religiously. I also am kind of a weird soul. I don't need much sleep. I tend to sleep only a few hours a night, and I always wake up like 5:30, 6 o'clock on the dot. It doesn't really bother me to be up early in the morning. I do auditions, I make coffee, I do whatever, and then I go to work 10 to 6, and then afterwards I'm doing interviews like this, or I'm coaching classes, or rehearsing a show, or traveling for a convention, or anything. I tend to keep myself busy, and so when I have downtime, I sit in front of something and I consume. I read whatever, and I don't do this every year, but there feels like every other year I'll write down everything that I've consumed, watched, listened to, music, media, whatever. And it was inspired by Steven Soderbergh doing that. He would write down all the novels he would read in a year, and it was amazing how many books he was able to read. But as a director, in a Hollywood setting, I was like, oh, yeah. We think about like how busy they must be. They work on such a big project, but that's the one project they work on, and then they get a break until their next big project. And so on all their downtime, they're like researching and doing whatever. And I thought to myself, oh, I have to do that. I don't necessarily have downtime because I'm always working, but the work is not so involved that I have to like travel to a different location or go on location anywhere. I go to a building and I come back home, and a lot of what I can do and consume can be consumed in that building, and I can also consume it at home at the same time. So like when you look at when Crunchyroll did that year-end wrap up of like, oh, how much anime did you watch or whatever, I had like 300 plus hours of anime watched at home, and that didn't include all the stuff that I watch while I'm at work, all the stuff that I watch off our database, all the stuff that I watch just as I'm recording it, and all the stuff that I record as a performer as well. So I'm a pretty obsessive consumer of life in general. So I think that's why I don't ever feel like, oh, I work, that's my work. I can't come home and it be my work. I don't look at it that way. What I do is it's my life. Um, so art in general is my life, and so anything that I consume, I look at it from that perspective.
But do you ever get burnt out though?
Never. I what my body does to me is like once or twice a year, I'll be like, "Oh, I need to take a nap," and my body like shuts me down for like an entire 24 hours, and I just like pass out, right? I do get burnt out on certain storytelling elements. I do get burnt out on certain trends and anime, if I want to just use anime as an example, it's such a big field. If I get sick of what the isekais of today are doing, I don't watch isekai. I go and I watch like a slice of life romance. When I was recording Kaiju #8 specifically, I was also recording Laid Back Camp. So when I would record Kaiju No.8, thered be all this extra sensory stuff happening. You're like just overwhelmed by the constant barrage of sound and lights and blood, guts, gore, and the intensity. And then all of a sudden I turn over to laid back camp and it's people cooking really nice food, being great friends, looking at the beautiful views of Japan and Mount Fuji and stuff like that. And it really kind of settled me. So really, it's just a pivot, right? If I get sick of something, or I feel like I've done enough of something, I just move on to the next thing and then I come back to it. So I get sick of anime in general. You'll find me in a movie theater more often, or you'll find me at my local theater more often. And if I get sick of like just performance and like extrasensory stuff in general, I'll listen to a lot of music or I'll read a book. And sometimes I get like pretty hyper fixated also too. So sometimes I'll pick up a video game. So like during the pandemic, everyone had to do something to waste time. I played, Breath of the Wild. I put like 200 plus hours on Breath of the Wild, and I also at the same time played Animal Crossing, and I put in however many hundreds of hours into that with friends. So I tend to focus on things pretty intently, and rather than get burnt out, I just kind of pivot for a little while to something else and then come right back to it whenever, just the kind of notion of it's faded away a little bit. My job, of course, is anime, so I can't totally get away from it, but I can kind of like ease off my consumption of it as far as like stuff that I'm working on, stuff that's not what I'm working on.
So there's never that moment where you're just like watching something and you're like too hypercritical of it. You're just like, well, if I was directing this, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have gone with that take.
That is just a an offshoot of being deep in this industry and having an expertise in it, right? What I've managed to, especially within my contemporaries, my peers within my space, I'm not hypercritical of the work that they do, because I know the limitations of what we have to do. And I also know that every director has their own preference on how something should look and sound, right? So I mean that in just like the flap work sense. Some of us prefer what we call a fuller flap feel, meaning like as a line is said, maybe an S or a follow-up sound can carry off even when the mouth is shut. Some people like a shorter flap things where like they'd rather, it have an extra rogue half flap or something before the end. Some people don't care about necessarily where it starts so long as it ends in the proper place or vice versa. So those are all stylistic choices and things that like I've come to accept for directors across the board. So I'm not that critical of that kind of thing anymore. Yes, performatively, I can be like, that was a weird read. Why didn't they get another one? Or was that the only one they had? And that's just the performer in me really thinking about like how I would have done it or, how I felt that character should have reacted in that situation. I can be a lot more critical of studios outside of my own because every studio outside of my own, it basically is doing the same thing. They're like, well, we're going to do this different than anybody else. We're going to do it different and better than Crunchyroll. We're going to do it different and better than Netflix. We're going to knock it out of the park. And so there's a lot of pressure and a lot of anticipation and expectation when you watch other companies that take on big projects, right? And other studios that do, and you're like, okay, well, show me what you got. And so I can sit there and watch it and be like, yeah, I love all my friends that are in the show, but I can also be like, that's interesting. Why did they keep that line when it was obviously 4 or 5 flaps short, or it ran this far over, or doesn't seem to fit anything? And I can reflect on the choices that studio's making, and if they were to recruit me or headhunt me or want me to work for them contract wise or whatever, like what kind of demands and stuff would I make so that it would still be the kind of project that I would work on, right? Those are the things that I can think of on a professional level, and I'm just like, I've become so inundated in this field and so accustomed to the nuances of it that I can spot a lot of things very quickly. And will it take me out of it? Sometimes. Other times I'll fight through it and kind of see where they've adapted and gotten better, right? I think there's certain anime where you can have newer studios and newer actors on it at different spaces, and you can be like, "Oh, that's not that good." But watch 3, 4 episodes later when they finally understand the process and understand how to do it. Suddenly, it's way better. Suddenly it's amazingly better. And you're like, hmm. And why does it look better? It kind of looks like the way you want it, the way we as consumers and we in our field in our studio want it to look, where it all seems to fit and match better and seems to feel more like prelay, seems to feel like it originated from, the flap usage that's in place. So, I don't know. I can be critical, but I can also hate watch things. I can, I want to enjoy what I'm watching, but I'm very good at hate watching things too.
Hey man, sometimes I'll just like pick a random isekai show just to hate watch, just to be like, you know what, I'm in the mood to just watch trash.
Oh yeah.
I'll admit it, like I've watched like a lot of trashy isekai shows, and I'm just like, they just all blend together. I don't remember much out of all of them. I remember like they happened. I remember who was in the cast, but I don't remember any story beats or anything like that.
Yeah, it needs like isekai for me needs like a really good entry point, right? I thought that one that I really wanted to work on, unfortunately I didn't get to, was Vending Machine in Another World. I thought right when that came out, I was like, oh my God, this has to be this has to be my show. This has to be the isekai I work on. I don't like working on isekai for the most part. This has to be the one. And I didn't get it, but then I watched it and I was like, oh, it's actually kind of like, other than a couple moments, it's actually almost like a kid's show. It had this kind of lighthearted feel to it, and like the interactions were a little chummy and like kind of like heightened. I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. It didn't feel like trashy isekai. Is it was it something that I specifically loved? No, but I was really charmed by it.
And sometimes like you watch a fantasy anime and it feels like an isekai because like the protagonist is written like they were from an
100%.
isekai, and it's like, what are we even doing?
I've directed those. Even if they're quality, I've had a chance to be on something like Beast Tamer. I was like, oh, that's an isekai. Oh no, no, it's just fantasy. It's just fantasy. But he's got a harem. He's got that that OP main character like dumb boy syndrome where like he's just doing his thing and like it's almost like he's kind of falling into these situations and people have been treating him a certain way his whole life and now he's showing off these powers and they're being respected more. And I'm like, oh, it feels isekai. Oh, but no, he's always had that. He's always been that way. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, get that out of your head. It's fantasy.
I know I'm gonna get some hate for this, but I do feel like, sometimes like a lot of these shows just look generic, and I often make the joke of like they all take place in like the same universe, but they just never but none of the characters interact with each other.
Hey, man, I can sense that. There are some times where I'm like, that background or that animation from this other show? I mean, animation studios can recycle. Even the biggest ones have done it. Disney did it for a long time.
I remember, what was it? I got a unique cheat skill or something along the lines.
Oh, I got a cheat skill. I got a
Mm.
cheat skill in another world and therefore became unrivaled in the real world too. That's mine.
I remember watching that, and I'm just like, this show cannot be real. I like this is like a joke, right? This is like an Andy Kaufman type prank, right?
I know, right? And it's getting a season two. But I thought the people in it were great. Lee George was Yuya, the lead guy in that, and his whole aw shucks kind of like approach to the whole thing, and like his soft boy kind of like entry point to it is like really, really good. And Kelsey Cruz and Kelly Greenshield and Katie Wetch all like play, a lot of the ladies that surround him in that because he's in high school, but also going through another door to another world to his cottage where he's in the fantasy world and he keeps going back and forth. Uh, Marcus Stimmick played this like Zen like kung fu master rabbit. And like Emmy Lowe played this little like holy arc emblem like powered like pig. It was so good. It's so ridiculous, but so funny. It's so great. I thought the character interactions were hilarious in it. It's trash, but I still had a good time working on it.
I will say this: if the one thing I liked about that show was Belle. Belle as Belle's character. Like he just played it as like a goofy like guy who was like,
Oh, Bell Schreiber's character.
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. The
yeah,
blonde. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He reminded me a lot of
Where he's just like
Pegasus from
a
like
lot of that, a
the
lot of this stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He reminded me a lot of Pegasus from the original Four Kids Yu-Gi-Oh dub.
Mhm.
Yeah, very like over the top and
Bell
just
Schreiber's
like
energy is very unique and specific and great.
yeah, I remember having him on the show and he's like just a ball of energy, just a lovely
Yep.
lovely ball of energy. That guy.
Yeah, I love Bell. Bell's a great guy.
Just like God, just like great energy. But I think like he was the best thing about that show, and his character wasn't in it enough. So it's like, can he just get his own show? Because I would like to watch.
Do a little spin-off. Yeah, yeah.
Because like everything else about that show was just like it felt like it felt like a self-insert where it's like, oh, I used to be a fat loser, but then I went to this other world and then I lost all this weight. Now everyone wants to sleep with me, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
ugh.
And then it's the one girl that recognized him from the very start, right? Kelsey Cruz's character always recognized even when he turned hot versus what he was before. Uh, that mangaka artist also did Fruit of Evolution, and so like that kind of like loser turns hot, turns OP, sort of like storytelling thing is kind of in that mangaka artist's wheelhouse. So it's like you have Fruit of Evolution, which is kind of like almost like 80s style, like Thundercats animation and villainy and stuff like that. But then you have this really kind of crisp, clean, digitized, almost CGI, cheat skill show where everyone's beautiful in it and like everything's kind of like overpowered and like there's a lot of gloss and sheen to it, but yet the story is still that kind of like a trashy isekai harem thing, it's kind of funny. You find them in all corners.
I mean, while we're on the subject of trashy anime, I gotta say, like, failure. What was it? Failure Frame. That was
Hmm.
just like the trashiest trash that has ever come out in recent years. But it's kind of amazing, honestly.
Yeah, I
Just
mean, I watched a few episodes of that because I had to help direct some of it. Tom Aglio, I think, is the lead guy in that. Um, yeah, Failure Frame's a crazy show. That one has a lot of CGI. Every monster in it's like this crazy, you know, digital creation monster that you fight, and the whole I don't know what my power is, therefore you get cast off elsewhere, and the rest of your class are a bunch of assholes, doing the thing that they're doing. Yeah, man, it's got its audience, and it was pretty glossy, and there's a lot of action, but not every story is equal.
but I think the moment that made me laugh the hardest was like the main female character gets knocked down, and when she gets back up, it's obviously CGI and it's poorly animated, and it's like you couldn't animate her getting back up. Oh God.
Oh, they have several moments like that where like they'll like turn and it's animated, but then like cut and it's CGI, or they'll walk a few paces and it's CGI, and then like back to regular animation. And I was like, huh, these are interesting choices. I wonder why they did that. Wonder if that was a cost-cutting feature or something was cut out completely that should have been connected there. You never know. Sometimes it just is what it is.
And it's just so stupid. There's just like a lot of moments that are just so dumb. Like, she's just fighting this one guy and then she like, he says something that gets her that catches her off guard, and then she like slips and then she just falls down, and I'm just like, that is terrible. Terrible
Yeah.
writing. Like
And most of the time she's this graceful person.
just what are we even doing? Like that show is like I'm actually surprised that it even got a dub considering a lot of the questionable content in it. But there you go.
A lot of weird things get dubbed. A lot of, somebody has to love something, one to make it, and then love it enough to push it, into another format onto the rest of the world, right? So you do what you're assigned.
I do love the fact that when they released the English dub, they're just like, you know what, we're not gonna do like a we're not gonna do like a weekly release for this. This is terrible. Everyone knows this is terrible. Just like dump the entire series. It's like if you want an English dub, here you
Oh,
go.
I wonder. That means it was probably a catalog show then. Like the J had already been out, right?
Yeah, the J had been out for like I think a year or so. I don't know,
Okay, yeah,
a
yeah.
month or
So when you get a
so.
show, yeah, when we get a catalog show like that, it is 50-50, or I don't know what determines it, but like sometimes catalog shows you just drop it all at the same time. But occasionally they'll do it where they like I think maybe it was Campfire Cooking in Another World. I think that one where like that was catalog, but they released it weekly. So sometimes it just depends on the show.
That's another, and it's interesting you mentioned that because like I was kind of curious, like how does, what what institutes a catalog show and what doesn't? I'm kind of curious now.
So a catalog show just means that the Japanese studio has already finished production on it. It's already aired on Crunchyroll or whatever site, right? And so it's already in existence and has been in place. So uh, the interest in it at that point for an English dub is one of practicality. There might be people like, gosh, I wish this one were dubbed, right? But there's not going to be a huge push. It's not like something like, I don't know, let's just say Dragon Ball Daima, right? Where they have that weird scheduling and how they do it. But like if Dragon Ball Daima had already been out for a year, that would be considered catalog. And the demand for it to be in English would have to be based on like our relationship with the licensors and stuff like that. But because Daima is so popular, there's partnerships that happen way beforehand that make sure that we're ready to kind of put it out on a certain schedule. Sometimes at the same time, sometimes a couple of weeks behind, sometimes 3 or 4 weeks behind, depending on how they do it. And then sometimes we do what we call the catalog thing, where we pick up something that there's enough demand for it to get done, or we were required to, in our partnership to make it happen to begin with. We record the whole thing then, and then based on what we think marketability might be for it, we either release it like Simuldub, where we release it a week at a time, be like, hey, here's the dub, but watch it as if it's happening for the first time. Or it's something like, Failure Frame, where it's like, okay, cool, we did that. Let's not hold it away from whoever wants to see this. Here it is, have it. And it'll all be released so you can binge it. So I think it really just depends on what they think the marketability of something like that is.
Because it's interesting that they do that because again, because I understand like, when you're dubbing like various shows, not all of them are going to be hits, but at the same time, it's like I don't see the point in like, holding on to something, dubbing something and holding on to it for a while. I'm just like I don't understand the
I wish
appeal
we
of
could do
that.
all of them, and get as much done. But the fact of the matter is, we have 12 studios, right, at our space, and that's huge. That's huge for ADR. And we do 2 shows per studio on average, and sometimes we do shows into the evening. So even per season, it's 24-ish shows that can get done. And there are just like this is why anime got popular during the pandemic. There's just so much of it. There's so much anime that is impossible to one record the stuff that's already been recorded and also record the new stuff that's coming in every season, right? When you talk about like what we're doing, for the most part, everything we record in a season is essentially the first time it's been recorded in English and it's a dub, and it's keeping up with essentially the release of the Japanese, right? You think about Apothecary Diaries and Our Last Crusade, which is in my studio. That's all happening all at once. You think about like Teogonia and Black Butler and Gorilla God and all these other shows. They're all happening right now, right? Right now, this second, and we're recording them as they're happening, even if we're like a week or two behind, or some of them are. I think To Be Hero X is like d at the exact same time, and even with all of that, even with us putting out per studio two episodes a week, we're incapable of going into our all the stuff that we missed recording or that has become available to record and recording those too and putting those out for everybody. It's just so much material. I do beg for certain shows to be dubbed. There's certain shows that have not been dubbed yet that I'm like, oh, please, God, let us dub this. Let me dub this. Put it in the schedule and let me dub it. And it really just matters on like what our priorities are and like who we are beholden to make the next, to make the next dub. Like who's throwing money at it? Is there value in doing it? Is there an audience desire for it to be done? So those things that haven't been dubbed yet end up usually sitting in perpetuity, sitting in limbo until for some reason there's just this is this open space, in a studio's calendar that's like, well, we got nothing else to do. Can we get that one? That kind of thing.
Because there are a lot of shows that, like you said, come out each season that just don't get dubs, that, Crunchyroll licenses, and they don't get dubs, and I'm just like, why? There's nothing like
I
questionable
know. There's
about
just so
this.
many of
There's
them.
nothing,
Yeah, though. Like when you see like every season well, especially when I'm watching and I see the list of like everything that's coming to our platform, whether we're dubbing it or not, everything that's coming to our platform, it's overwhelming. It's like, wow, that's what's coming. That's how many anime are being made right now and being released right now. It's like, and like, bro, we can only do 24, and there's like 60 or 70 coming out. And we're like, ah, we're like, okay, well, pick the best 24 or pick the ones that we're required to do, and then go from there. And even the stuff that we want, we get outbid sometimes for shows. That's why properties that are like big properties that even though we're streaming them on our platform, sometimes go to other studios to be worked on, there's a lot of competition to do it and money is thrown at the most desirable stuff. And sometimes the things that aren't the most desirable just kind of sit there. And you get to watch it in the Japanese because it was made, but you don't get to watch it in English because nobody's got the resources to record it.
Yeah, it just bugs me because it's like there are a lot of shows that are like that. I mean, I'm not saying like would be better in English, but I would like to see like how they would like translate into English. But they
Absolutely.
just they just
Absolutely.
don't but it's just not possible because there's no English dub, and I'm just like, okay, is anybody interested in picking this up, please?
Yeah, yeah, you gotta start writing into every studio and be like, "Hey, man, what are you doing this season? Could you try to get this one?"
And like I said, some and nowadays like now because anime is becoming more bigger and you're seeing these studios like promote like a lot of anime shows to air on like specific channels or whatever, you're gonna get like there's gonna be like much higher demand for specific properties because like, well, if this show is gonna be what do you call it, like if we're gonna throw enough money at this is gonna be our next big thing, we gotta get this to dub, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Whereas before it was just like, okay, what show did we license and who wants to work on this, But nowadays it's like it's
Yeah.
much more. I don't want to say cutthroat, but it is like a little bit cutthroat in that aspect.
Yeah, man. Anime is so desirable, and these big properties that come out, right? And a lot of them are coming out at the exact same time. It's a feast right now, and you can't buy up and gobble up everything. Something has to go elsewhere, and somebody looks at something as their main course, and they throw everything they can at it to get it, right? So Don to Don, obviously was a huge popular show, and even back in the day, Demon Slayer, huge popular show. You just can't get them all, right? We talk about how things are spread out and stuff like that, and it's just like, even with that, we had Attack on Titan, we had Dragon Ball Z, we had Kaiju #8, we had Solo Leveling. We honestly can't complain that we're not getting big properties, but you want all the big properties. You want the recognition, you want the hype, you want all that stuff, but you can't get them all, right? And that's where other studios can pop in and grab something that can really put them on the map.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, you see like trailers for anime and it's like, oh, we're doing like same day release, and then it's a different studio and it's like, well, that would have been cool to dub, but oh well, the higher bidder won on
100%.
on that
Yeah,
one.
100%.
You know. So anyway, before I wrap this up, can you give us an update on what you're currently working on and where can people find you online?
Sure. You can find me at shawngann.art, or you can follow any of my social media under at Ready Kafka, and that's on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me across all social media platforms. I'm currently working on the second core of the second season of the Apothecary Diaries, and we're in the midst of a very intense arc right now. And I am also working on the return of season two of Our Last Crusade or Rise of a New World. And up and coming, Kaiju No.8 will be returning for a second season. That's been announced. And, there's a lot of excitement behind that. And I look forward to sharing that with everybody in July.
All right, thank you so much for taking the time off to do this. I know we had to get what do you call it? I know it was a hassle trying to get you on here, but finally did it, and it was well worth the wait.
I'm always happy to do these things, and yes, it's always a matter of finding openings and schedules and stuff. Like everybody's busy, everybody's got their things going on, but I'm never one to balk or turn down an opportunity to connect, to share, to talk, to have a good time.
All right, and if you ever want to come back, you know where to find me. And thank you so much, and take care.
Thank you, Abdullah.